All right. This is going to be interesting. I'm going to try to go through an entire process here of actually editing together my book trailer. I'm going to be using Premiere just because I have it and it's familiar to me. You will probably be able, some of you might be able to use Premiere. Some of you might download one of the free apps such as Hit Film Express, Lightworks, DaVinci Resolve. There's several different free but powerful editing tools out there. I'm just going to stick with Premiere because that's what I know. That being said, I understand that some of y'all, your book trailers may look different from mine. You may have taken a different approach, and it's all good. Everybody's going to do their own thing when it comes to this, but I just want to make sure that y'all get to see my process. You're looking at my computer screen right now. I have taken Google Chrome and I have opened up my script, and you can see it's a 2-column script, and the only part that I really need right now is the audio section. I want to see kind of how this is going to be put together. So I put that over here to the side, and then I opened up Premiere and I expanded my Premiere. I kind of changed the layout around, but I have it over here so I can still see on the screen my script, and I can see my workspace here in Premiere. You'll notice here in my script, I actually have the name spelled out phonetically for the author. The author's name is M-E-I, May, and then her name is M-A-T-S-U-O-K-A. So I phonetically broke that out so that I could say it correctly in my voiceover. I still messed up. And so I'm going to put in the voiceover so you can kind of see some of the mess ups in here as well. But let's get back over here into Premiere. You'll see here in Premiere that I have adjusted my workspace. I actually like this workspace on my computer, so I'm going to go up here and I'm going to save this as a new workspace, and I'm going to call this Dempsey Space, all right? And I'm going to click OK, and then you'll see here that now I have a new workspace in Premiere. If I go back to editing, what you would normally see is going to be here. If you go to editing, you click these 3 dots, click reset to save layout. And then this is what you are probably most familiar with when you start editing in Premiere. There are things down here, though, that I almost never use. Like, I never use the media browser, so I close that. Libraries, don't really need that. Info, don't need that. Effects, definitely use. Markers, don't need. So I close it. History, don't really use that. And so I try to minimize the number of things I have down here. But given the fact that I have so many clips and I don't have them named or anything, what I'm going to do is I have moved my files over here to the edge. And the way that you adjust a space is you just click on this and then you move it over. And you see how if I put it right here, how the purple there is going to actually put it in the same space where my source window is. That's not where I want it. I actually want it over here on the edge. So I'm going to grab it, loosen it again, come over to the edge, and there you see the green. And now this entire area will be my project files here. If it would actually double click and open, which it probably did down here. So I actually need this up here. And then I'm going to take my effects and get it out of the way and drag that up there as well. So now I've got my projects, my effects, or my main project folder, my effects, and then over here I've got this. I'm going to go back and click reset to saved layout so that this goes back to normal. And because I've set this up for me already, I'm just going to click Dempsey Space, and now everything is set up the way that I want it. One thing that you'll notice that we don't have right now is a timeline or a sequence. There's multiple ways to do that. One, you can just take your clips and drag it down here, and that would create a new sequence. But I don't want to do that. And the reason I don't want to do that is because these clips are actually shot in 4K. And the reason that I did that is because I don't know if this is the way I want it to look when I'm actually editing. I may want it to be kind of zoomed in. So what I'm going to do is come over to my project bin, and I am going to go to File, New, Sequence. You can see the shortcut for that is Command-N. If you have Premiere on a PC, that's going to be Control-N, but you hit Command-N, it's going to open this up, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to edit in 720p, 30 frames per second. This is going to be shared on the web. Most people would see it on a phone, so it's not really, it doesn't need to be 4K. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to title this, which is going to be Footprints Trailer. My microphone is in my way, so my typing is somewhat impeded. But I'm going to call this Footprints Trailer, and I'm going to click OK. And now you can see that I have my timeline and sequence down here. I'll be able to get my clips here, but before I do that, I want to go ahead and deal with my audio. I think it's really important to lay down our audio first. And I actually have several different elements of audio that I'm going to bring in. I'm going to double click here to import. All right, again, I just double clicked in this empty space. You can go to File, Import, or you see here, Command I is the keyboard shortcut. So Command I is going to pop open that window. And on the desktop, you'll see that I've got a thing called Footprints VO Raw. VO stands for voiceover. I'm going to import that. And this is my sound file.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary.
So that's my sound file. I'm going to have to go through and pick out the different parts of that. But before I do, I'm going to double click again, and I'm going to bring in my audio files here. And so one of them is a folder called Curiously Fun Versions, which actually has multiple versions of the song that I have chosen. And then there's another one that is just, it's called the stems, and it is the different instruments that are a part of the song. And I don't know if I'm going to use these, but just having these that I can use is pretty cool. So I'm going to click import, and you'll notice that I'm importing 2 folders. When I do that, they're going to come into Premiere as bins, all right? They just look like folders, but in Premiere we call them bins. So here are those, and you can see how long these run here. So let's see. Click on this one. You can see that's a minute 33 there. So that is the long version, and that's probably the version that I would end up wanting to use. But just to show you the other things that I have, in this, I have the bass. Or the drums. Or the keys. So there's so many different things. Strings here. Let's see. There's so many different things. So if I want to take any of those different parts of that song and use them, I can do that. But again, I think I'm probably just going to stick with the full version of the song just because I think that it works for what we are doing here. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to leave it alone because I don't need that yet. What I do need, though, is going to be my parts here where I talk. So I'm going to go through this process and get all of my audio laid down and timed out, and then I'm going to go in and put in all of my music. All right, so I'm going to get this set up here so that I can follow my script. I will have music playing before that, but we're going to just start with the VO, and we're going to lay all these out. There were times where I messed up in there. So I did pick up, and then 3, 2, 1, and then picked up with where I was. I'm here, though, at the very beginning. I'm going to click I to set my endpoint.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary. But Mr. Wolf disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in...
All right, so I've got this part, all right, in. So now I'm going to come here. I'm going to drag this down. I'm just putting this down for the time being just to get it down here and in order.
We all know wool.
All right, so now what I've got to do is decide how long I want it to actually be spaced out. And I'm zooming in on that a little bit. And I'm going to pull down the bottom of audio track 1 so I can actually see the waveforms in there. So now how long do I want it to be?
Footprints in the snow.
All right, so using my arrow keys there to get it right at the beginning.
Footprints in the snow.
So footprints in the snow. So how long do I want that to be?
People's minds in.
I'm going to bring that out a little bit and drag down. Again, I'm dragging down just audio, so I'm going to drag this, put that there, and let's see how long that time's out.
Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow.
And I think that may have been just a little too long. So I'm going to drag this over, kind of space it a little bit different.
People's minds
in Footprints in the Snow. All right, so there we go. So I've got that. So I have that. The only thing I don't have now is by Mei Matsuoka. So let's listen to this.
By Mei Matsuoka.
And I messed up.
Matsuoka. Okay.
So that was me saying the name again there. So here I'm going to do what you should always do when you're recording a voiceover, and that is say pick up, and then you count down 3, 2, 1, silence, and then you start talking.
Pick up. 3,
2, 1. Now I'm going to set my end point.
Footprints in the Snow by Mei Matsuoka.
Okay, so I did that all in one take. So I'm actually not going to need this clip anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and just grab this, drag it down, and replace that. And if you'll notice here, if we zoom in a little bit, there's actually a little bit more space here than I really intended. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the gap in between there. And I do that by making sure I go back to the arrow by hitting V on the keyboard. If I'm in the razor blade or the ripple delete or whatever I'm in, I'm going to hit V, go back in there. I highlighted that gap, and now I'm going to hit delete. And then I'm going to back that all the way down there. So let's see what that sounds like now.
Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow by Mei Matsuoka.
And there's kind of a gap there that I don't really want. So I don't want it to be like Mei Matsuoka. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit C on the keyboard to turn into a razor blade. And I do want a little bit of a gap there because I don't want it to be Mei Matsuoka. I want it to be Mei Matsuoka. So I'm going to press V. I'm going to come back to this. And I got two options. One, I can hit that, hit delete, click in the empty space, hit delete, or I could have just drugged that down and replaced it. Let's hear it now.
By Mei Matsuoka.
All right. So there we are. It's taken a while, but we've gotten all the way through here. I'm going to have a little bit of music that's going to play probably in between there. So I'm just going to come down a little bit further, not very far. And I'm going to find the next thing where I say every children's book, and we start with that. So let's play this. And you can see a little bit of noise, like everywhere there's a line there. There's some sort of a noise there. So I'm going to hit I.
Every children's book makes the wolf the bad guy.
Okay, that's true. I'm going to make the wolf the bad guy. I'm going to bring that down here.
Every children's book makes the wolf the bad guy.
And I want there to be just a tiny bit of a gap there, not very much.
From the Three Little Pigs.
And you can hear me breathing in there, so I'm going to take that out.
From the Three Little Pigs to Goldilocks, the wolf is there to snatch you up and scarf you down.
All right, so that was good. Going to drag that down here, and let's listen to that.
Wolf, the bad guy. From the Three Little Pigs to Goldilocks, the wolf is there to snatch you up and scarf you down.
Okay, so that's good. I like that so far. So we've gotten through this point. So now let's talk about Mr. Wolf. Mr. Wolf doesn't like this. So let's see. I'm going to set my endpoint.
But Mr. Wolf doesn't like this. He's a good wolf, and he wants everyone to know that wolves don't have to be bad.
Okay, so there we go. I'm going to do that. I'm going to put kind of a gap down there just because I want there to be some space in between these. Zoom out a little bit so we can see what we're working with here. Doesn't have to be bad. You know, how you read is entirely up to you. You need to keep in mind that you are trying to entice children to want to read these books. I realize that the way that I read and do voiceovers and everything is really based on how my mom used to read books to me. She was very expressive, used lots of inflection when she read, and she would do the different voices. And so I tend to carry that with me while I'm doing things. And that's why I say things the way I do sometimes. Let's see here. What's the next line? He decides. Okay.
He decides.
And you could hear me take a big nasally breath right there. Just like that. So I'm going to try to cut that out.
He decides that he wants to write his own story. And so it begins.
All right, so I'm going to take that and drag it down. And I think I want there to be a little bit more of a gap in there. All right.
He decides that he wants to write his own story.
And I don't necessarily need this gap right here, so I'm going to hit C. And I'm going to drag that down. Let's see what that sounds like.
Own story. And so it begins.
Okay, so come down just a little bit. The next thing we've got is Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process. That's going to be down this way just a tad. Set my endpoint by pressing I on the keyboard.
Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process and splash. He comes back to reality. Just then.
All right. I think all of that paced out pretty good. I do want there to be a little bit more of a gap right there. The gaps aren't set. Those are just there kind of visually to help me realize that I intend for there to be something there kind of taking up that space. All right, so I am working at a wooden desk, and I actually typed in that there's a VO of a knock, knock, knock. But while I was recording this, I was like, why would I record a VO of knock, knock, knock when I could just knock on the desk? So I knew that if I knocked on the desk while the microphone was on there, that would probably distort the sound on the microphone. So I picked up the mic and held it down and recorded the sound that I needed, which pop quiz, what is that called? Foley, good job. I know nobody answered that, but Foley art is the recording of sounds and sound effects that you will need inside of your story. Now, one thing is, this is a sound effect. It's not part of the VO. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to label, and I'm actually going to change the color of this. I'm just going to make it, let's just go with purple. And you can see that it stands out now. So I know, oh, okay, that's not necessarily the same thing everything else is. Also, and I'm going to go through and adjust all of my audio later, but you'll notice over here that's peaking right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab that and drag it down a little bit. Let's go to like -6. And you can see that was hitting around -6 there. Not over modulating, but it sounded good. So no joke, that's probably the best Foley that I have ever recorded. I'm going to finish this section up here with our audio to find out how the story ends. So let's go and do that.
To find out how the story ends and to learn more about his
And clearly I messed up.
3,
Pick up
2,
1. All right, set my endpoint.
To find out how the story
Ends
and to learn more
about his adventure along the way.
You will have to find this book for yourselves. It's definitely worth following up on.
All right, and I'm going to hit end. I'm going to drag that down, and now I'm going to have that gap in there. And so I've got all of my audio laid out, and you can see just, and there, granted, there's some gaps in there. And part of that is so that I can actually put in music in places. But you'll notice that we're looking at, this could easily be a minute and a half. So I'm not asking you to do one this long. If you do, that's fine, as long as it's good. But you can see that mine is definitely going to be coming in over a minute, unless I go in and cut some of the things out. And we will look at that in just a minute. So we've got everything laid down here in terms of our voiceovers and our Foley sound here. But now I can actually get rid of the screen and free up some real estate space so I can edit. So I'm going to hit the green button here and just take up that whole screen there. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and put in my music and see if just by chance things are going to time out okay with the song that I chose and with the voiceover that I have recorded. So let me go in and click the Curiously Fun versions. And again, this was the actual full-length song. You can see it's a minute 33. I really kind of would like to get this down to 60 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and edit a full version, and I may come back in and see if I can cut it down at some point. But I'm going to take this and drag it down, and I'm going to put this on track 2. I'm going to go ahead and mute track 1. So hit the M, and now you won't be able to hear anything on track 1. So I'm going to hit play. You see where this audio is hitting. This audio is hitting really high. So you want your music to be hitting probably -18, -15, somewhere in there. Unless it overpowers the voiceover, and then you're going to bring it down even more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to bring down the audio on this whole track. There's different ways you can do this. I'm just going to zoom in on it. I'm going to grab the audio and I'm going to drag it down. Let's see. I'm going to bring it down to -12. Let's see what happens there. So it's hitting right around -12, just dancing right below there. All right, so now I want to see what it sounds like, or see what my audio sounds like. Let's just do that.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary, but Mr. Wolf disagrees.
So it's hitting around -6, so I think that worked out really well. So I'm going to unmute this track, play it together.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary, but Mr. Wolf disagrees. Find out.
Okay, so I have this here. Actually, I think the music might still be a little too loud. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to drag it down. Let's do -18. See what happens there.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary, but Mr. Wolf disagrees.
Okay, so I like that. I like the way that sounds there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen. I'm going to pull all of my audio that I recorded down and bring it in where I want it to be. So what I want is this whole first part is going to be the title. It's going to be the title of the book. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to drag it down, and I want it to start right here.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary, but Mr. Wolf disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow by Mai Matsuoka.
And you can see there that kind of times out really well, especially right here at the end.
By Mai Matsuoka.
Okay, and then I want the next sound to come in right here where this one hits. So I'm going to drag this down.
Uoka. Every children's book makes the wolf the bad guy.
So I want this one to come in right around there. Whoop, too far. There you go.
The bad guy. From the Three Little Pigs to Goldilocks, the wolf is there to snatch you up and scarf you down.
And I want this to come in here. Let's see. Whoops. There we go.
Scarf you down. But Mr. Wolf doesn't like this. He's a good wolf, and he wants everyone to know that wolves don't have to be bad.
I think maybe this will come in here. Let's see.
He decides that he wants to write his own story, and so it begins.
You can hear the beat there. So that's where I want my next bit to start, but you see it kind of trails into it, that doesn't necessarily fade in, but it's not like an immediate sound at the beginning of that clip. So let's see if this works.
Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process and splash! He comes back to reality. Just then,
let's see if this works here. Just then.
to find out how the story ends.
Okay, so I'm not 100% sold on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to play around with this here in this area. So let's see.
Don't have to be bad. He decides that he wants to write.
And that's kind of abrupt there. So let's see if that's going to kind of build up a little bit.
He decides that he wants to write his own story, and so it begins. Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process and splash! He comes back to reality. Just then.
And here's what's good about having this. I could actually take this sound effect and put it down here. And what I can do with this is have a split edit so that that sound actually comes in. We start to hear the knock.
Then.
I'm going to move that over. So hopefully let's zoom in on that. Actually, let's just play it. Let's see.
Reality. Just then.
I think that needs to come over just a tad. So I want to kind of hear, as it says then, I want to hear the dun dun dun.
Just then.
And I think it could come over just a tad bit more. It's amazing. That was probably 3 frames that I just moved it over.
Reality. Just then.
I like that, right? So you hear that. It's amazing the difference there. I literally just moved the sound file over about 3 frames, and it starts while I'm still talking, and it adds this continuity and this tightness to editing this together. It's really, really important to understand the power that you have as an editor with the framing or with the frames, that you control each and every frame and where it hits. That's video frames that record, that includes audio, graphics, anything. As an editor, you control that.
Just then.
Just then. And then let's see.
To find find out how the story ends and to learn more about his...
So it goes from just then, dun, 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 there's a knock on the door, and that means that there's something about to happen, right? That's a pivotal moment in this book. There's some sort of mystery. There's something unknown to the reader. So what we're going to do is we're going to let that just be kind of the thing that draws the people in. Hopefully they're going to find out, or they're going to be like, oh, wait, what happens? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this last part and I'm going to let there be a little bit of suspense.
Just then,
I'm going to let there be that little bit of suspense there. And then I'm going to bring this down. And let's do this. I think it probably needs to come down there. I don't want it to be too far.
Just then, to find out how the story ends and to learn more about his adventure along the way, you will have to find this book for yourselves.
And I've got the last section here.
It's definitely worth following up on.
I could take it or leave it. And I'm going to see what happens if I just end it. Actually, yeah, if I just end it. No. Yeah, we'll do that. Sorry, I'm so indecisive.
It's definitely worth following up on.
Okay, so I don't like that. So there is another option, and so I'm going to go into this option with you right now because this is pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my audio file, and let's say that I want this entire thing to be... We'll say a minute 24, all right? I want it to end right around a minute 24 here. So that's 0 hours, 1 minute, 24 seconds, and 0 frames. So that's where I want it to end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to edit this clip in Adobe Audition. Now, Adobe Audition has not opened on this computer before, so it's going to take a minute. I'm going to stop recording and we'll be right back. All right, so Audition has just opened. And you can see that when it first opens on a computer, it has a lot of things that you can actually use here. One of these is create your first podcast. I probably should have watched that. But what we're actually going to be using is something called Audition Remix. So I don't use this a lot, so I'll probably have to kind of feel my way through it. But there is a learning video that teaches you how to do this if you get into it and you need help. Here's our song. You can see. There's our song that we are wanting to work with. And if you'll remember, I want to get this cut down to about a minute and 24 seconds. So I'm going to click on properties here. But before I do that, I need to do this as a multi-track session. So I'm going to say footprints remix. Going to let it save and do what it does. Click OK. And now what's going to happen is, now that I've done that, I can bring this song, drag it over here into this multi-track session. And then under properties, you'll see that there's different options. One of them is called remix, and it is turned off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable remix. It is going to analyze this song. And when it's done, then I'm going to come to where it says target duration, and I'm going to type in how long I want the song to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in 124, and I'm just going to do 000 and just let it figure it out. And it remixed it, and it got it down to 126. So I'm going to click save. And I'm going to click OK, yes, whatever here. I'm going to save it again just because I do that. And let's see, sometimes that'll automatically replace inside of Premiere. But what we did was we created a whole new version of the song. So what I've got to do is stick with this. I got to go to File, and I'm going to export a multi-track mix down of the entire session. I'm going to call this Footprints Remix Mix Down. It's going to be a WAV file. It's going into my Documents folder. I could go and change that easily. I'm just going to put it on the desktop where all my other files are at the moment. Hit save, hit OK, let it save, do its thing. I'm going to minimize Audition. And now I'm going to come and import from the desktop the remix mixdown. All right. So I can take that and I'm going to drop it in here at the very beginning. And you see not much changed, but what did change was the song ends about 5 seconds sooner than what it did before. So let's see how this ends now.
Worth following up on.
And there we go. All right, I like the way that ends. That really doesn't change much of anything in our song. It just kind of, it finds it's black magic, I guess. And it finds the elements of the song that match up, and it is able to trim out and try to get it down to close to the length that you want it to be. It does that to plus or minus 5 seconds of what you are choosing. If it can find it, it's got to analyze it and see if that even works. But there we go. So we have edited our audio together. And this entire project we now know will be 1 minute and 26:15. So again, this is going to be about 26 seconds longer than what I really want it to be, but I'm going to work with it anyway. I think I have more than enough clips to actually work with this. I went in and recorded, just using my cell phone, I recorded a ton of B-roll clips that we can use with this. All right, so here we are. We're going to try to put this thing together. And I have all of these clips, and I shot this just using my cell phone, the default camera, stock camera on my cell phone. I was able to get this book, and I was able to go in and just get a bunch of different shots. I had set up a stool in my closet so that I could go in there and record voiceovers for my podcast. Ends up not being a great space for that, so I just haven't cleaned that up yet, so I hope to get to that. But what it did end up being was an absolutely fantastic space for recording pictures of a children's book. So I would just encourage you to take some time and actually do this and make it look pretty good. Get creative with it. The art in this book I thought was pretty cool, so it worked out really well. So what I want to do is I'm going to start with the title page here, or I'm with the title of the book right here at the beginning, and I've got this title clip, and you can see that I kind of slowly move in to that. I'm going to pick that, kind of a slow push in there. I'm going to take this, and I don't need any audio from this, so I'm going to take this and drag it down, and now you'll notice that what has happened is this is the way the clip looks. This is the way the clip looks in my video. And the reason is I shot this in 4K and I'm editing in 720. So what I'm actually going to do with this clip is scale it to frame size. So now that it is there, it actually fits, and that's good. But I want this clip to go from here all the way to here. So what I'm going to do is, in order to make this happen, I'm going to click R on the keyboard, and that is going to turn on the rate stretch tool. So what happens is that allows me to take this and drag it to fit the exact length that I need it to be. And it does that by slowing the clip down. So if I were to right click, go into this and click on speed duration, you would see that clip is now 51.8%. So I cut it almost, or I doubled the clip, which means that I slowed it down by almost half. So now I'm going to play it. Okay, so there we go. I'll turn the volume back up But that does play. It's pretty smooth, all things considered. I don't know that I would necessarily do anything to change this. I could, if I wanted to, go in here and put a motion keyframe on so that I could kind of slowly zoom in on the book, but I don't know that I need that, and I'm going to leave it as is for now. So let's listen to the next part.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary, but Mr. Wolf disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow by Mai Matsuoka.
Okay, so I may have made a mistake with that, and that's okay, because as an editor, I can go in here and change things around. Now, I've got her name right here, Mai Matsuoka, and so I definitely want to use that there. So I'll go ahead and do that.
May in the Snow.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the clip. And this does say Footprints in the Snow, and then it says her name. So what I want is, I want it to be Mai Matsuoka. As soon as it says her name, I want to see that on the screen.
In the Snow by Mai.
And as soon as it says it, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to drag that down here and do that. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, so hopefully we can see this. Again, you can see this is definitely bigger than this, and that's okay. What I'm going to do is, instead of zooming all the way out on this one, or scaling it out, I'm actually just going to zoom out enough so that I can read footprints. All right, so here we go.
In Footprints in the Snow by Mai Matsuoka.
Okay, so there we go. Now, I want y'all to understand, this is not perfect. It does not have to be perfect. If we were making an actual trailer for the book publisher, we would have access to all of these files so that we could do this for them and make it look as good as possible. I took a cell phone, I held it in my hand, and stood in my closet and tried to get decent video of these clips. So, again, I'm not expecting perfection. Most of y'all may end up just shooting this and editing this on your phone. And so I know it's going to be a challenge. Trust me, I understand. I'm just trying to give you the best example that I can. So let's not worry about it too much.
In Footprints in the Snow.
So here we go.
We all know wolves are big.
Well, here's our wolf. Let's drag this down. And now I'm going to hit R, the rate stretch, and I'm going to drag this over to that point. Hit V, go back to that.
We all know wolf.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to click in between there. And when you click in between two clips and then hit Command D, it does the default transition, which, unless you changed it, is going to be a cross dissolve.
We all know wolf.
But what do we have here? Our image is too zoomed in. So I'm going to right or double click, go to Effect Controls, and I'm going to zoom this out to where I want it to be. So here we go.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary, but Mr. Wolf disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints.
Okay. Now you will notice that right here, that goes to black. It goes to black. I was trying to be creative. I didn't even know if I would use this, and I may not. I just want to see what it looks like. But what I did was, while I was recording this, I just dropped the camera so that the camera would go face down and turn black. So let's just see what that looks like.
disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow by Mai Matsuoka. Every
And I don't dislike that. I don't think that it looks bad. But what I could do is come in here and take that out. Hit R to do my rate stretch. And I could zoom, like I could do this, all right?
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary. But Mr. Wolf disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow.
Okay, so one thing that I do want to do here is I'm going to double click on this clip and I am going to go and add a motion keyframe. So I'm going to come back to just this point for now and I'm going to hit a position and scale keyframe. I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to scale this up a little bit and I'm going to move him more centered and I'm going to drop him down. All right, so that's where I want this to end. So I'm going to highlight these, right click, temporal interpolation, ease in, and then I'm going to drag those over towards the end of the clip. Here, I'm going to right click, temporal interpolation, ease out. I'm going to drag that all the way to the beginning. You won't even see it at the beginning. But now I'm going to play it and let's see what that looks like with kind of a zoom in.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary, but Mr. Wolf disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow by Mai Matsuoka.
Okay, so far so good. I'm going to hit Command S to save this because that is what we do because we like not losing our work. Let's listen to the next thing.
Every children's book makes the wolf the bad guy. From the Three Little...
So it says from the Three Little Pigs. So what I'm going to do is I am going to click on this. And you know what? I actually think that might could work here. Even instead of this clip, which I actually really like. So I'm just going to take it and drag it down. We'll probably come back to that at some point. But with this clip, I'm just going to kind of slowly push in here. All right, and I'm going to bring this down again, just the video. I'm going to hit R to rate stretch this and see what we think about that.
We all know.
Oh. Now that's going to be pretty significant because it's 34%. That's going to not look great.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and...
Yeah, I definitely do not like the fact that that is zoomed or sped in so much there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to hit rate stretch, and I'm actually just going to bring it down a little bit. And you can see that's 59%. So let me explain what is happening here and why that did not look great and what we need to do to make sure that it does look good. So when I recorded this, I recorded at 60 frames per second. I am editing at 30 frames per second. So that means that I could slow my video down to 50% and it would still look pretty good. If I go below 50%, there's not enough frames for it to look very smooth. So what it's going to have to do is it's going to have to start stretching the frames. It's not really stretching, it's like doubling the frames. But you're seeing things for longer than what you're really needing to see them for. So what we're going to do is we are going to make sure that we never get our speed percentage down below 50 with this. Now, if I were to shoot at 120 frames per second, I could take it down to, about 25% or so, and it would still look good when I played it that way, when I stretched it out. But for this, I'm not going to do that. So let's just see what this looks like when I play it back.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and...
Which is not great, but it's okay. So let's scale that to frame and let's see.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary. But Mr. Wolf...
And that's Mr. Wolf, so that's good. We see him there. But then we've got this really cool creative shot of the fireplace, kind of a tighter shot. So let's go in there. And that's kind of shaky. I don't know if there's like really a great spot there. Let's see if we can take the end and see what happens. So I'm going to hit rate stretch, drag this out. Just because I want to see percentage wise what we did there. That's down to 39%. So that's not going to work. So I'm going to drag it back down. Now I can't see, so let's see. Only need to move it 11% or so. So hopefully, yeah, there we're at 57%. So let's see what that looks like. It's a really tight shot of the fireplace.
Disagrees. Find out how...
Okay. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to actually move that over just a little bit. And I'm going to scale it out just a tad.
Wolf disagrees. Find out how...
And then we've got another shot inside of his room. So let's bring that down. And let's see. So that you can see is what the shot looks like. This is what it's zoomed in on. So I'm actually going to come here. I'm going to scale that out a tad, but I don't necessarily want the text in there. So I'm going to kind of bump that up and then move this over. And I actually wonder if we could kind of rotate it and make it look a little bit more like it's supposed to. So let's see what that looks like.
Wolf disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow by Mai Matsuoka. Every children...
And at the end of that, I'm actually going to dissolve that to black.
Matsuoka.
And that dissolves to black because there's no video under it. If there were a video under there, you would see whatever that was under there. But let's zoom back out here. So we've got our children's books here, and this is representative of the children's books. He's reading these, and it talks about the different things. This is, I guess, him chasing sheep. Goldilocks, which we specifically mentioned, and then the Three Little Pigs, which we specifically mentioned. So what I'm going to do is start with this as our first shot here. And I'm going to bring it in, let's see. All right, I'm sound effecting. So, all right, so now I'm going to just put a cross dissolve on the beginning of that. I'm going to move it down. Let's see.
Matsuoka. Every children's book makes the wolf the bad guy.
And I'm going to zoom out just a tad on that. And let's see what happens if we move that over. Move it up. And the way I'm doing that is you see the positional, the X and Y axis here. So I'm just positioning all of that this way. Just to where I like it. There's no right or wrong here. So let's see.
Every children's book makes the wolf the bad guy.
So now I'm going to bring in from the Three Little Pigs.
From the Three Little Pigs.
All right, so I'm going to bring that in here. I've got the Three Little Pigs. So I'm going to bring that down. Oop, I wanted that right there, and obviously that is not going to fit the screen the way I want it to. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to zoom that down, or sorry, there we go, move it around a little bit. There we go, we got our 3 little pigs, we got our wolf.
Wolf, the bad guy. From the 3 little pigs to...
And now to Goldilocks. So let's go ahead and find Goldilocks. I'll start it at the very beginning. And drag that down. And again, 4K has been a huge lifesaver here because it's allowing me to frame these up the way that I want them to be framed. So
guy. From the 3 little pigs to Goldilocks, the wolf is there to snatch you up. The wolf is...
Okay, and let's see if the wolf, if there's a picture of the wolf as a bad guy. And I don't think we used this one. But you can see the wolf and then the kids here, so I am pretty sure we could cut back to this. So let's take this. I'm going to put it here. I really like the texture of this. It looks like there's texture, even though there's not necessarily texture there. But I'm going to scale out, and I'm good with that. So
to Goldilocks, the wolf is there to snatch you up and scarf you down.
All right, and I'm going to click on the end of that, hit Command D, and do a cross dissolve. So we'll fade that out.
You up and scarf you down.
All right, so we got our Mr. Wolf doesn't like this, all right? And we've already done some work with that. So I'm going to bring it over here. Click on that. And then I'm going to bring this down so that it goes like this.
And scarf you down. But Mr. Wolf doesn't like this. He's a good wolf. And he wants everyone to know that wolves don't have to be bad.
All right. And I think there's another good place for a dissolve to black.
Have to be bad.
And then we'll bring up the clip
He
here.
He decides that he wants to write.
So I'm going to bring this up where he decides that he wants to write. So let's see what that looks like. Whoop. Glad I tested that. Whoop. Here we go. That was pretty good. Pretty steady once I actually got to it there. So, and I like the framing of that. So I'm just going to go to set to scale. And then I'm going to dissolve up here.
He decides that he wants to write his own story. And
so it begins, right? So this is him writing his own story. So what I'm going to do now is take this, and again, I like the framing of this one. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to put it here, and I'm going to, let's see.
His own story, and so it begins.
So what I'm going to do here is let's play around with us and see if we can do a cool little position and scale keyframe thing. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to ease out from that. And let's see what happens. All right, so we want to zoom there, or move there. Move that out. So go back over here. So That's the way we want that shot to end. This is the way we want this shot to begin. I'm going to temporal and ease in on this. So let's see what this looks like.
He decides that he wants to write his own story, and so it begins. Mr. Wolf gets lost in the right.
Okay, so I'm going to rate stretch this and move it out to there. Let's see what it looks like now.
And so it begins. Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process.
All right, so he's lost in the writing process. And then this is his story, right? So let's see. So let's see here. All right, so I got this. Let's scale it out just a tad. And then instead of this being so crooked, which it may end up playing crooked, and that's fine, let's just see what happens if we rotate it. All right, so rotated, there we go.
Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process and splash.
And then splash. So I've got to see if I have splash. Not 100% sure that I got a. It does have splash written on the page at a point. But let's see. I have some other clips that I might be able to use here as well.
He decides that he wants to write his own.
Let's see. Move this down.
He wants to write his own story, and so it begins. Mr. Wolf. Mr. Wolf gets lost in the right.
And there's kind of a little bump in the video there. I don't necessarily know that I like it.
Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process.
And let's talk about that. Lost in the writing process, but he's also kind of lost in the woods. So let's see. It's a little shakier than I'd really like for it to be, but we'll see how it works. So let's scale that to frame size, delete that.
Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process and
then he is going to end up in the water, although so I think I'm going to use this part right here because he's clearly going into the water. So let's see what would happen if we come out there. And let's make it seem like he falls into the water. So let's position and scale. And then at that point, I want to zoom in. And we want to have that come up.
splash. He comes back to reality.
And where does he come back to reality? Let's see. He comes back to reality in his bathtub, which I did not get any pictures of. Oh, yeah, I did, actually. So I'm going to drag that down, put that here, and let's scale that, and let's move it up. Nope. Redo that.
He comes back to reality.
And there's a little bit of a jump at the beginning of that, so let's see.
Comes back to reality. Just then.
So he hears something at the door. So there's a little bit of a time lapse there between the bath and the door.
To find out how. To find out how the story ends and to.
Okay, let's see. We're going to kind of move this over. Oh, zoom out just a tad. And we'll start this here. So we're going to position scale. And we're going to ease out. And at this point, and there. And we want to ease into that. Drag it over there.
The story ends, and to learn more about his adventure along the way, you will have to find this book for yourselves.
So find this book for yourselves. So I'm going to try and just get in a couple more pictures. Because I really did like the art in the book, and I think that that's one of the cool things about books is there's so many different like art styles represented in books these days. So we'll start here on this, and we're going to position that. I'm going to ease out from that, and then at the end of it we want all of the birds to be represented. We're going to ease into that. And let's see.
You'll have to find this book for yourselves. It's definitely.
And I'm going to rate stretch that just a tad there. And we're going to find one more clip that we can use. And here, I think is a pretty good one.
Definitely worth following up on.
And I like the way that that blurs. That's actually, it blurs because of the shot. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to my effects tab, and I'm going to type in blur, and I'm going to grab a Gaussian blur. I'm going to drag it on here. And I'm going to go to effect controls, and I actually want that to maybe at this point from there to the end, I want it to get blurrier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the blurriness right now at 0. And then by the end of it, I want it to be super blurry. Okay. So I want that to kind of ease into that again. I want that to kind of ease out. What I think I may do is just kind of move that, have a little bit more space there between those. And let's see what it looks like.
It's definitely worth following up on.
And there's our blur. All right, let's see. Make sure that the ends. And I want it to go to black right there. And there we go. All right, so that's good. I think I want to put a cross dissolve there. So I'm going to click in between those clips and hit Command D. And let's see what the cross dissolve looks like.
It's definitely worth following up on.
Now, that may be zoomed in a little too much. So I'm going to double click, go to Effect, Controls, and I'm going to scale it out just a tad. And maybe let's move it over this way just a little bit. So let's see what that looks like now.
It's definitely worth following up on.
All right. So now we can watch this whole video all the way through.
We all know wolves are big, bad, and scary, but Mr. Wolf disagrees. Find out how he plans to change people's minds in Footprints in the Snow by Mai Matsuoka. Every children's book makes the wolf the bad guy. From the Three Little Pigs to Goldilocks, the wolf is there to snatch you up and scarf you down. But Mr. Wolf doesn't like this. He's a good wolf, and he wants everyone to know that wolves don't have to be bad. He decides that he wants to write his own story, and so it begins. Mr. Wolf gets lost in the writing process and splash! He comes back to reality. Just then, to find out how the story ends, and to learn more about his adventure along the way, you will have to find this book for yourselves. It's definitely worth following up on.